All right. Hi, everybody. So today we have a very, very special guest on the channel. Someone I've been following for a while and following his teaching, so to speak, or his advice maybe for quite some times. And I'm very, very happy to have Dr. Anthony Chaffee with us. Hi, Anthony. How are you?
I am very, very well. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, my pleasure. My pleasure. So we've been communicating by email for quite some time now, and it's the first time that we meet face to face. And I have tons of questions for you. Some of them general, and some of them personal, because most of the people listening to us today or watching us know my story. In 2020, I was diagnosed with a kind of genetic colon cancer, stage 3, borderline stage 4 colon cancer. And because of the family history, the size of the tumor, I'm not going to go through the whole story again. My odds were not very good. I mean, not very good at all. And the protocol that the doctor gave me, both in France and here in the US, where the diagnosis was the same, the protocol was the same, the prognostics were the same, everything was the same. And it was basically 1 to 2 rounds of chemo, so 12 to 24 sessions of chemo, then radiation, and then surgery. So it was very heavy protocol, not one or the other, but all three. And I've decided to go another direction. I fasted, water fast for 21 days. Then I went on a very strict ketogenic diet. But very soon I discovered that from all the foods that you can have on a clean, organic ketogenic diet, almost nothing could go through. If I had vegetables, if I had especially spinach, I was on the floor crying because of the pain. If I had, of course, you forget all grains and sugar on keto, some meat like chicken, pork, nothing went through my digestive system. The only thing I could eat was ribeye, steaks, nothing else. It was the only thing that didn't give me amazing pain. So I started to make some research trying to understand why, because a little bit ago, not just before the cancer, but sometimes ago, I was a vegetarian for almost 10 years. And I ended up a little bit overweight with psoriasis all over my skin, and eventually with colon cancer. So even though I had the genetic terrain, I also had a lot of stress at that time. It was COVID time in my life and my business. I own a martial art franchise, so all my business went down and everything. It was a horrible time, very stressful, and boom, I had the diagnosis. So long story short, I'm here eating nothing but steaks. After my 21-day fast, the tumor was 50% smaller already. And then I'm here eating nothing but steaks for about 3 months, 2.5 months. And then I realized that, hey, if I can't have veggies, maybe I can have vegetable juice, because the fibers was really my main concern. So I went back to having both ribeyes cooked in butter with pink Himalayan salt, nothing else, and a glass of vegetable juice every day. And that was okay, but I soon realized that it was not necessary. And some vegetable, even without the fiber, like spinach, still hurted me. And then I discovered several channels, Dr. Barry, yours, and I realized, maybe I have a problem with oxalate. And then thinking back, I realized that when I was a vegetarian, I was living in Singapore at the time, and Singapore is on the equator, so you don't have a lot of variety. It's always the same thing. There's no winter veggies and summer veggies and stuff like that. So it's always the same thing. And for 10 years, every single day, I had two huge handfuls of spinach, put it in the blender, add a banana, a little bit of almond milk, blend it and drink it every single day. And as I was watching your videos and reading and learning more about oxalates and all the problems that can come from eating too much vegetables, I was like, wow, this is me. This is absolutely me. And 4 months exactly after I was diagnosed, I was cancer-free, eating basically nothing but ribeyes. And everybody was telling me, you're going to die twice as fast with all the red meats. You're crazy. It's insane. And I'm like, look, of course, it was organic, 100% grass-fed, from the farmer, less than a mile from me. So I had the perfect condition, and I recognize that. But still, I cured my cancer with red meat. That's all I can say. What do you think?
Well, I think it's amazing. And I think it's, a good proof of concept against the idea that red meat causes colon cancer. If this is a cause of colon cancer, obviously it's going to precipitate colon cancer. And you found that it's exactly the opposite of that. And when you actually do look at the data and the literature, you find that those weak associations with red meat or any meat and colon cancer or any other kind of cancer are very poorly done. They're very poorly done studies. They have many, many biases in them, and they do not actually show any sort of connection between red meat and colon cancer. And if you understand cancer biology, which I took 22 years ago, which is why I stopped eating plants altogether, you understand how this actually works. I mean, we've known since the work of Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg. He published in 1951 a paper, I believe, is called The Origin of Cancer. And he talks about how this is actually a metabolic mitochondrial disease. And if you understand that, and you understand that mitochondria in cancer cells are damaged, or in any cancer cells are damaged, and they require much, much more glucose and sometimes glutamine in order to function, that limiting those fuel sources is obviously going to confer a significant advantage in fighting that cancer. Cancer cells need 400 times the amount of glucose that normal cells do. So if you have an abundance of carbohydrates, that's obviously going to fuel the fire. And if you limit your carbohydrates and keep them low, and you just having your body naturally produce them, it's going to seriously limit that. And so when you understand that, you understand the cancer biology, it makes a lot of sense. And it makes no sense that red meat would cause it or precipitate it.
Yeah. And I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. What about glutamine? So now the research shows that not only cancer cells can use glucose as a fuel, it's as the main fuels, but also glutamine. And in some case, some research also show that after quite a long time, they can start to use ketones as well. So at the end of the day, we're like, okay, there's nothing I can eat. What's going on? But nevertheless, the red meat thing worked for me. Why is that?
I haven't actually seen any literature showing that cancer cells can run on ketones. If you talk to people such as Professor Thomas Seyfried at Boston College, formerly at Yale, he argues quite clearly, no, they can never run on ketones at all, ever. And that's because of the damaged nature of them. They are dysfunctional and they can't run on ketones. So as far as the glutamine is concerned, yes, those are the two main fuel sources, glucose and glutamine for cancer cells. We make glutamine, we make glucose, and glutamine is in basically any protein that you choose to eat. So it's a bit more difficult to limit that. This is where sometimes, like you did, like the water fasting, that will limit the glutamine as well. You'll only have the glutamine that your body is making. You only have the glucose that your body's making. That will severely limit the available fuel sources to your body. And then after that, you're eating, but you're not overeating, and you're doing bits of fasting and things like that. And it has been shown in different animal models and human models that a calorie restricted ketogenic or carnivore diet is more effective than just eating more. So restricting a bit, that's difficult to do sometimes if people are already skinny or losing weight. You can't. It's not healthy to lose too much weight, so you do have to eat enough in order to maintain a healthy weight. Which you actually can do. Most cancer patients, because of it's taught in pathology in medical school that because of tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF alpha, that you cannot eat enough to keep on weight. You will just get cachectic. You will just get very, very skinny and sick. And that's actually not the case if you're eating an appropriate diet, which is a carnivore diet is for humans. So I think that's why this was beneficial for you. Among other things. So first of all, you were correcting your metabolic health by not eating carbohydrates, not eating sugar, alcohol, and other plant toxins that actually do damage the mitochondria and actually do dysregulate your mitochondrial function. So you're eliminating those factors that are derailing your metabolism, you're fixing your metabolism, and you're giving your body what it needs to survive and thrive. All those things are good things. It increases and boosts your immune system as well. And it also limits the available food sources for the cancer cells, whereas your cells can all run on ketones very easily and certainly have a sufficiency of glucose as well for your normal cells, because they don't need 400 times the amount of glucose. The glutamine sometimes can be targeted with medications. This is something that Professor Seyfried talks about and it's published in multiple studies, that if you have sort of like something that can target the glutamine and limit the glutamine's access, or the cancer's access to glutamine, that works really, really well. And different cancers use different amounts of glutamine or glucose. So say, for example, glioblastoma is an aggressive form of brain cancer that is less glycolytic than others, meaning that it uses less glucose as a fuel source as other cancers. So it's a bit more resistant to a ketogenic diet. But a ketogenic diet in the literature has already been shown to be confer survival advantages to people. There's even randomized controlled trials, low numbers, like 20 people. But in the randomized controlled trials and the case studies, with 15, 20 patients, 30 patients.
Who do you want to message?
And there are dozens of these. They all confer a survival advantage. And there are actually people still alive to this day with GBM, just doing a carnivore diet or a very, very clean keto diet, mostly carnivore diet, 10 years after, where this is generally, a 3-month survival on average for people that don't do treatment. And these people like yourself just said, hey, I'm not going to do treatment. I'm going to go in another direction here. They're 10 years down the road. They have no progression of their disease. That's amazing. So even then, in those things that 70% of a GBM's energy comes from glutamine, just focusing on the glucose side of things actually already does such a big difference, where 70 to 75% comes from glutamine. So that shows you how significant just limiting that fuel source to the cancer is, and changing your metabolism and fixing your mitochondria so that they work better and they're healthier and they're not going to behave in a bad way, and that those bad cells can finally die. Or even there's a sorry, I'm blanking on the name here, but it's called mitophagy. People know about autophagy or autophagy, which is body sort of recycling and breaking down old cells. But you can actually do that. We actually do that with our mitochondria as well. And so when that system is broken down, then we just have all these damaged cells that just dysregulate growth and precipitate cancer. And being able to recycle these and break these down and get rid of them and then put new, clean, healthy mitochondria in there can significantly help as well. So it's all part and parcel of that. And that's been shown in multiple studies that after a few months on a ketogenic diet, any ketogenic diet, and a carnivore diet is just sort of the ultimate ketogenic diet, because it eliminates everything. That has been shown after a few months to increase the number and health of your mitochondria through this and other functions.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Sort of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it's super interesting, because it's always good for people in general, but people who have cancer or who had cancer, such as myself, to understand the options and for me to understand why it worked, because I started my research with Professor Thomas Seyfried's books, Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. And that was the beginning of my journey. Then I keep searching and I read all the scientific literature that I could find. And I'm convinced that one of the reasons why I'm still alive today, and one of the reasons why I healed, is simply because I wanted to know more about that disease. I just didn't follow a doctor that I didn't know, with a protocol that I didn't understand. I made my research, and I truly believe if you have cancer, you have to know everything you can about cancer. If you have diabetes, you have to learn everything you can about diabetes. If you have something else, you have to learn everything about your disease, not to feed on fear and useless knowledge, but just to know what's going on in your body and how you can fight it. And I would never say to someone, don't do chemo, don't do radiation, don't do surgery. I mean, it's a personal choice. But what I know is whether you follow the regular protocol or not, you still have to change your lifestyle. And for me, it's really, really obvious. As far as my story, sometimes, so I was diagnosed in September. I did my fast at the end of September, early October. Then the tumor shrunk 50%. I started to do a ketogenic diet, realized that I couldn't eat a lot of things, and ended up eating nothing but steaks, basically. Cooking my steak in butter and having a little bit of beef liver, raw beef liver, almost as a supplement. And that was it, and water. Yet the pain was excruciating. It was really, really, really painful. And after the second or third MRI, they realized that the tumor was on a nerve, and that's why it was so painful. So talking with my oncologist, I've decided to go for what was supposed to be 6 sessions of chemotherapy, just for the pain, just to help with the symptoms. And my oncologist was very clear with me. He said, look, I recommend 24 sessions. I'm never going to be able to heal you with 6, but I promise you it's going to help with your pain. So I say, okay, let's do it. So I went for chemo. I did the first one, the second one, the third one. And after the third one, I was pain-free. So I told him, okay, we stop. I feel that I'm being poisoned. So I stopped after 3 sessions. And the doctor he told me, you're crazy. It's working. It's working on you very well. So let's keep going. And I said, no. It's not what I feel. I don't feel good. Every time I go to your office, I feel like crap, and the rest of the time I feel good. So, I'm not gonna keep going. I stopped after 3 sessions and went back on my regimen and my diet. I also took some supplements. I read a lot of scientific literature on the benefits of melatonin for cancer. So I went outside every day in my underwear in the sun, even though it was freezing because it was the winter. I did a lot of cold exposure. I went swimming in cold river or cold waterfalls here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I did everything I could. I worked on the psychological aspect. I did mini trampoline in order to boost my lymphatic system. Everything that I could, everything that I learned from the science, from the biology, I did. And I soon realized that there's a huge gap between modern oncology and the research and the biology and the science. And this huge gap, I couldn't understand that what I read and what apparently seemed to be true and proven was not part of most doctors' way of thinking. And that's where I told my oncologist, I was very thankful that he accepted to keep following me, even though I refused almost everything that he told me, but he kept testing my blood and doing my MRI every 3-4 months. So I'm very thankful for that. The guy was really open-minded. He disagreed, but he was open-minded. And after 4 months, exactly 4 months, I was diagnosed on September 9, and on January 10, he told me, Mr. Evrard, you are cancer-free.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So that's the story. And to this day, I keep going. So I fluctuate between keto and carnivore just to have a little more flexibility with my diet. And to be honest with you, I feel much better on carnivore, but it's hard for me, especially as a French. I mean, I always joke with my American friends, you guys, you go from crappy supermarket sliced bread to carnivore. It's easy. You don't lose much. I go from traditionally made, pure, clean sourdough French bread. So that's not the same, I'm not losing the same thing as you do.
That's true.
I feel really, really much, much better when I eat ruminant meat. So beef, lamb, goat eventually, stuff like that. It's night and day. So I went a little crazy during the holidays. My mom is visiting from France. She's here with us in South Carolina. She's a pastry chef. So I went a little bit overboard, but starting tomorrow, I'm back on carnivore, and that's how I feel great. But it's hard to explain to people. I'm not trying to say convince, but just explain that, hey, I'm cancer free and I want to stay that way, so I'm going to eat nothing but meat. People look at you and think you're crazy.
Yeah, they do. But, you know, the thing is that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You've done it and you have those results. And so it doesn't matter what any study says. It doesn't matter what any person says or any doctor says. You are living those results. And, you know, they can explain away the reasons why that would be. But either way, it is the case. You do not have cancer anymore. You are alive. You have reversed something that is not supposed to be reversible without, you know, standard, you know, chemo, radiation, and surgery. And yet you've done that. And so, you know, it's up to them to explain why, not you. You know, you've said you've submitted that, like, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, and it worked. You know, they have to explain why it worked, you know, and in spite of what you did, you know, so that's on them. And so I wouldn't waste my time trying to explain anything to them. Just be like, hey, well, then you explain it to me. You tell me what happened. And if they can't do that, you know, they can't talk.
Yeah, and that's why I was so anxious to talk to you, and it was really a cool idea to meet on a video, because I wanted to learn a little more why it happened, and exchange with someone who's not gonna think that was crazy and that was just, you know, an accident. No. I survived, because not only I survived, but I feel so much better. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna add some pictures of me before and after on the video, and it's crazy. When I was vegetarian at 45, 48, something like that, or now that I'm 50 years old and that I'm mostly on carnivore, it's night and day. I still have some weight to gain. I lost a lot of weight when I had cancer. I went from, I don't know in pounds, but I went from 70 kilos to 49 kilos. And then now I'm back to 65, 66 kilos. So I feel great. I'm 9% body fat. You know, I'm a professional athlete. I do martial arts. I do parkour. I do boxing. I do CrossFit. So it's important for me to be able to move and to be able to perform and do my thing. And I know that you're an athlete yourself. So I'd like to talk for a few minutes about the carnivore diet, or the very, very low carb diet, and muscle growth and fat loss and sports and athleticism in general. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I you know, as an athlete, I've been on a carnivore diet and off a carnivore diet, you know, playing at very high levels, even at a professional level, and on both the traditional diet and, you know, a very clean, traditionally clean diet, you know, low fat, you know, and whole foods. Everything was cooked and prepared at home, from what was thought to be healthy ingredients. So this wasn't a, you know, a processed food diet or anything like that. It was heavy in meat, but generally lean meat. But you know, it was what a traditionally healthy diet is supposed to look like. And the difference between those in my athletic performance and how I feel is just, it's absolutely night and day. I have so much more energy, so much more endurance, so much more strength. I can just go and go and go. And this has been supported by the work of people such as Professor Tim Noakes out of South Africa, who's, you know, one of the top exercise physiologists and sports medicine doctors in the world for, you know, 50 years. And, you know, he has done randomized controlled trials with ketogenic and, you know, carb fueled athletes, and he finds that there's no difference in their output. So you don't lose anything when you go on a ketogenic diet once you're fat adapted, and that can take, you know, 2 to 3 weeks for some people, up to 3 weeks generally. Usually people are adapted at that point. And, you know, then they actually switched the groups and made the ketogenic group start eating carbs, and the carb group started eating ketogenic. And then after, you know, 42 days, they give it quite a lot of time. They tested them again. They all had, you know, the same sort of output. The difference being the ketogenic group could keep going. They could just keep going and going and going and going. So they're, you know, people say it's like, well, you know, for endurance athletes, sure, you know, yeah, you can do that. But for hard sprinting, work, you know, lifting weights and, you know, martial arts or some sort of thing where you have to be quick and explosive, yeah, you had a disadvantage. Actually, no, they found that no, you weren't at a disadvantage. And so you didn't lose any strength or power or explosion or that that initial energy that would give you a big explosion of force, and you could keep doing it and doing it and doing it because you were tapping into your fat stores when you're in ketosis, whereas someone else, they run on their blood sugar and their glycogen. And even if you carbo load and fill up your liver with as much glycogen as you can, you have maybe 2 hours, and so you will run out of that. That's a finite resource. And as endurance athletes, marathon runners will tell you, you keep running and you hit the wall and you just feel horrible and you're wretched. And most people stop there, but some people will keep pushing. And if you keep pushing and pushing, you break through the wall. And then you get your second wind, your runner high, you can just keep going forever. And the harder you go, the better you feel. Well, what that is metabolically is you're eating a whole bunch of carbohydrates, your insulin's up. And so insulin, basically shuts down your metabolism. It puts you into a fat storage metabolism as opposed to a fat burning metabolism. It blocks proteolysis. It blocks lipolysis. So it forces energy into cells. It doesn't allow it to come out of cells, simply put. And so when you're in that state, you can run on your glycogen, but you will run out. And once you run out, because you're not replenishing your glycogen from your fat stores, you will feel wretched and your blood sugar will drop and you'll feel awful. Normally, it takes 24 hours or so for your insulin to drop down to a normal enough range for you to start accessing your fat stores. But if you push and you push and you push and you push and you push, you can force yourself to start mobilizing energy, or else you'll die. And so once that kicks over and you start being able to mobilize your fat stores, that's when you get your second wind and your runner's high and you just feel amazing. Well, when you're in ketosis, you're always in your runner's high. You're always in your second wind. And so you always feel amazing if you're working, and you just go and you go and you go and you go, and you will never hit the wall. You're already past the wall. And so that's the benefit of training like this. And I find that I saw that firsthand playing rugby at a very high level. And once I got my fitness up to a certain point, I literally could not get tired. I could not push myself hard enough for long enough to get tired. I was just that fit. And because I was just running on fat stores, I could just go indefinitely. I was training 6 to 8 hours a day, every single day during the week. And then I'd play sometimes 3 or even 4 games of 15. So like 80-minute games every weekend. I just wanted to play as many games as possible just because I love the sport. I want to get as much game time as possible. And so, I did. Never, ever was able to work myself to the point that I could get tired. So that's a huge advantage. From just a working out perspective, I've never found it easier to put on muscle and to maintain a low body fat percentage than on a carnivore diet. I don't even have to try. I look like I work out quite regularly. I almost never do because I don't have time anymore. I've sort of, in the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to get back in the gym. I've been back sort of maybe twice a week. Before that, it was literally months before I was in the gym. I look the same. I have the same body fat percentage. I put on a bit of muscle because I've been working out and it's easy to put on weight when I'm in a carnivore diet, but I maintain it otherwise. I still look very muscular. I'm still very lean. And, when I'm able to work out and I eat enough, it's very, very easy to put on muscle. And like I said, I'm always at a low body fat percentage. It never goes up.
That's interesting because I had the same experience, so to speak. I was always very skinny, and putting on muscle was much, much harder for me than losing fat. And I know for some people it's the other way around, but for me it was always hard to put on muscles. Then I had that vegetarian phase where I didn't put muscle on, but I gained a lot of fat. That was crazy. I was literally skinny fat, which I've never been before. And I also had, at the same time, I had a spine accident in a martial arts class. So it might be related also to an injury, but nevertheless, when I started to be on keto and then on carnivore, I finally managed to put on some muscles and some weight. And now I'm not big by any way, but I feel that almost I go to the gym 3 times a week. Sometimes I switch a weightlifting session for a CrossFit session, but basically I work out 3 times a week in addition to my martial arts and boxing. And I feel it might be in my head. I feel that every single session I gain a little muscle. So it's really impressive how it works and how the body works, and the fact that we're in 2022, almost 2023, and most people, including professionals, still have no idea how the body works.
Yeah. No, it is incredible. And the athletes that are rediscovering this, because this was well known. I mean, you look at stories of the ancient Greek Olympic Games. They all talk about how they just like would go to like carnivore diet. They just eat more and more meat as they're leading up to the games, because that was giving them a better advantage. People talk about the gladiators in Rome, and they've just seen too many movies, where the gladiators are just these ripped, gods and things like that. That was not the case. And they said, there's like, oh, these gladiators, they ate grains, and look at the movies. They were just so ripped, I mean, look at Spartacus, they were jacked and they just ate grains. Like, well, idiot, the guys in Spartacus, the actors weren't eating grains. I can promise you that. They were on probably, designer steroids, but like, the Roman gladiators, they were indeed called the grain eaters. And that's because grains make you fat. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to put on fat. That was you look at the history books, actually read about the time. I have done this. I knew this years before this ever came up in conversation, before people started making this comment. And so I knew the nonsense behind it. They were called grain eaters because they ate a lot of grains in order to fatten up, because they really didn't have armor and things like that. And so if you're very lean and you get stabbed in like 2 inches, you're much more likely to hit a major organ or artery if you're slender. Whereas if you have layers of fat, you're more likely to hit a bit of fat, and like you'll bleed a bit, but whatever, you won't get a major organ, you won't die. And so this was actually a survival advantage by being a bit fatter. It was body armor, it was protection. And you look at the golden era bodybuilders, they were just meat and eggs.
I was going to
steak and eggs.
The 60s and 70s. Yeah. They were living on steak and eggs.
That's it. And that was before all the, the designer steroids, came into popularity. Arnold Schwarzenegger's body idol was Serge Nubret, who is a French gentleman. He's one of the best bodybuilders of all time. And this guy was jacked, absolutely shredded up until his death in his 70s by they think foul play. They think someone actually killed him. Probably one of his kids is what the suspicion is. It's just unfortunate. But this guy was ripped all the way up until then. He would regularly eat 6 pounds of horse meat a day, and that was it. What do you need to build muscle? What sort of nutrients do you need? You're trying to build and maintain meat. That's what animals are. We're meat. So what do you need? You need meat. So everything you need to grow and build and maintain your meat is other meat. And so, you get these animals that have already done the work for you. They've turned plant material into animal flesh, and you just, get the animal flesh, and then you maintain your animal flesh. So it works a lot better. The other reason too is actually helping people's hormonal health a lot as well, is you're actually getting cholesterol. Cholesterol is the basis for all of your hormones, like testosterone, estrogen, progestogens, cortisol, all your mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. There's something like 27 steps between cholesterol and testosterone. Every single one of those intermediary steps are all hormones. They all have a role in your body. They are all derived from cholesterol. So this is very, very important. There was actually a recent study that came out, I think earlier in the year, that showed that cholesterol, dietary cholesterol, was a direct, indicator of and conferred a benefit to muscle growth and hypertrophy training. So it wasn't just protein. You had to get enough cholesterol as well, and that actually helped you build muscle. And I smiled when you said that you felt every time you go into the gym, you feel like you're getting a bit bigger, you're putting on muscle, because I've seen that whenever I don't, your water weight doesn't fluctuate on a carnivore diet, because you're just not you don't have any glycogen, you're not storing a whole bunch of glycogen, you're not eating, you're having different amounts of glycogen, where that's binding into molecules of water per glycogen molecule, and so that you're storing in water weight, and you have varying amounts of water weight, and also different sort of inflammatory factors in plants have you retain water as well. So you don't have all that retained water. It's all very normal. And so your weight is generally very consistent. You generally are just, seeing what your body weighs. And every single time I go into the gym, and if I'm working out regularly, I will be like half a kilo heavier every single time. And it's just like clockwork. It's like every single time I'm like 0.5 more, 0.5 more, sometimes even like a full kilo. If I do like a heavy leg day and be like big, heavy legs, your legs are big, they can put on mass pretty quickly. I'll gain like a kilo. That's crazy. That is crazy. Like people think that it's just like, oh, that's, just bullshit, but I'm seeing it. And so it's very, very, very easy to put on weight. Now I've had a lot of weight. I've built up my body over decades. The last 30 years, I've been working out pretty consistently at a high level, taking breaks here and there when I've been too busy, but pretty steady. I've been working out and lifting weights for 30 years. And, and so I've been quite big. I think my biggest was something like 270 or something like that. Like I had a lot of mass on me. I had extra weight for sure, but I was very muscular. And so, maybe it's easier for me to sort of regain some of that lost musculature, but for whatever reason, I'm able to put on weight very, very easily when I work hard and eat enough meat.
Yeah, I can completely recognize myself in that, even though I'm not someone who can gain weight and muscle easily. Definitely saw a difference in carnivore. My last question, I said last in quote because it's two questions in one. It's about something that I had to face after I was declared cancer-free, and that was post-cancer inflammation. The tumor was so big that the scar tissue was big also and very inflamed. And for months and months and months, I have suffered a huge colorectal inflammation. And I've realized that depending on the food that I ate, the inflammation just flamed up. It was crazy painful. And again, back to red meat and inflammation went down. And that goes against every single medical advice that I have received. When I was telling some of my friends who also do research on cancer and talking to doctors and oncologists, they told me, look, it's because you eat red meat that your inflammation is still there. And my argument was, look, that's what I used to cure this cancer. So how can it keep the inflammation alive with the same food? I don't understand. What is your view on this red meat and inflammation? Yeah. Because I heard it all. Red meat is too acidic. You have too much iron in your blood. Red meat creates inflammation. I heard it all, but it's only when I eat nothing but red meat that I feel better.
And you've gotten better too. So that's the thing. You just have to sort of chuckle at these things because it's like the physicist Richard Feynman said, it doesn't matter how brilliant your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. And so, they're saying there's just like, oh, well, look at this study and look at this thing and look at this guy. And he's so smart and he says these things. But then when you do it and it does the exact opposite of that, it's wrong. And so these people are wrong. That's just all there is to it. It was funny. There was sort of a good example of that in The Simpsons, actually, the cartoon. One of the original ones where when they were actually funny, they went to Africa and they saw that they were on a safari and they saw this big egg there and it was like hatching, and Lisa and Homer were watching it and Lisa was all excited. Oh my goodness, something's hatching. Oh, this is amazing. And all of a sudden this rhinoceros comes out of the egg, hatches out of the egg. And Lisa was just like, wait, what's going on here? And then like mother rhino came over and started like nuzzling it and things like that. And Lisa just said, but rhinos don't come from eggs. And Homer just said, what did you just see, Lisa? He said, yeah, I know, but what did you just see? It's just like, it doesn't matter what you thought you knew. If you see for yourself in front of your eyes that it's the opposite, it's wrong. Like you need to trust your own vision, your own experience. Like this is just the absurdity of this is appalling, you know. And you know, if you understand the actual literature does not show that red meat causes cancer. First of all, there's absolutely no study that has ever even claimed that red meat causes cancer. There have been no studies that have even been designed to show causation one way or the other. That's first of all. So all of these studies, they're epidemiological, nutritional surveys that show maybe an association. So, oh, this guy eats meat more than this guy, or these people eat meat more than these people. And they have a very, very, very small increase in colon cancer. Okay, but there's 1,000 different things that they were doing as well. It wasn't just the meat.
Drink.
Yeah, well, they smoke and they drink, exactly, and they and other things as well. And the thing is too is and because that is true, because people that eat meat are, because they've been told their whole life that meat's going to kill you, they're more likely to say, all right, well, fine, then I'll just enjoy myself. I'll smoke, I'll drink, you know, I'll drive fast, all these sorts of things. And so obviously those are called confounding factors. And so that's why these studies are rubbish. And so if you don't actually see like over a 200% increase association, it's basically background noise. You basically don't even consider it relevant. And so all of these studies, which were actually very poorly done, I mean, they were looking at meat, and they said like pizza, because pizza sometimes has meat on it as a topping. Pizza was considered meat. It wasn't considered, you know, the vegetables, because they could have vegetables on the topping. It wasn't considered, plants and crust and sauce and all these sorts of things. They're all plant-based. They didn't say it. They said pizza is meat, you know, and that's just fraudulent. You know, that is an absolute fraud. And that's what they were doing. They were precipitating these frauds. They were saying things were meat that were very bad. I mean, no one is arguing that pizza is good for you, that I know of. And so, you know, they're lumping that in with meat, and they're trying to castigate meat. And still, even with all that, they only found an 18% increased association in this one study. And that's the only study that everyone looks at. But this was also, you have to look at who was the authors on this. All these people from Loma Linda, these Seventh-day Adventists that are vegan by religion, and they put out, you know, biased studies, and they cherry pick and intentionally leave out studies that didn't show an association with red meat or meat in general and cancer or anything else. And so when these studies were redone and corrected for these confounding factors and didn't have these biases, they found zero increased association with red meat or any meat and colon cancer and so forth. And the University of Washington in Seattle actually just published a large meta-analysis actually going through all the data and saying that all of these studies saying that meat and red meat are problematic are basically just lazy studies. They were bad, poorly made studies with all these biases. And so that's nonsense. And I mean, and what in red meat causes inflammation? I mean, that's nonsense. Like, I mean, that is just something that has been claimed. It's not even, it doesn't even have like the tenuous grasp on reality, like those epidemiological nonsense studies that have an 18% increased correlation. There is nothing that says that red meat increases inflammation. Just nothing, you know, and it doesn't. I mean, what's in it? It's acidic. Is it really? Does it? You know, so do you get a sharp, sour taste in your mouth when you eat a steak versus a lime? You know, I mean, what's acidic here? You know, there's actually acid in citrus, you know. But you need to eat that because it's more basic. What the hell are you people talking about? And this idea of acidic and basic and all that sort of stuff is stupid anyway, because your body carefully controls and regulates the pH of your blood. If you start mucking with that and you start putting yourself more alkaline than you're supposed to be, you can die, you know, or more acidic, you can die. And a steak is not acidic, you know. You put that in your mouth and leave it there. Is that going to burn your teeth? Is it going to burn your tongue? No, you know.
And
so
I myself believed in the acid alkaline diet when I was a vegetarian. You know, that all this crazy theory. And I realized doing my research that as long as you have enough minerals in your system, the body can just tampon the acidity, and it's absolutely not something you need to worry about. The body knows what to do with it, and it has known for forever, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's also something you really shouldn't muck with. You know, it's your biochemistry is so complicated.
Yeah.
You know, we have hundreds of billions, if not trillions of cells, right? I mean, really hundreds of billions, if not trillions of neurons, you know, so we have a lot of cells. And there's you know, thousands of mitochondria in each one. There's all these different organelles. There's all these very carefully controlled, you know, and regulated amounts of, you know, pH and different minerals and electrolytes and chemicals. Everything is so perfectly regulated. It is so intensely complex. You will never be able to, well, really to even figure it out completely. But you'll never be able to say, oh, well, I'm smarter than this system. Like I'll go and muck around. You're just not going to do that with your, you know, alkaline water. I mean, that's nonsense. You know, you're messing with a complex system, and you can cause pretty serious harm from that. And like if you're taking in, you know, a lot of things that are basic that can neutralize acid in your stomach starts to more and more and more. You can actually give yourself an alkalosis, you know, from that. If you breathe too fast, you know, you can breathe out all your CO2. That can actually change the pH, and you can get lightheaded, and you can feel bad, and you can pass out, and you can die. It's not good for you. So if you do mess with your pH, right, you're going to try to do all these sorts of things. Your body's going to adapt it. It's going to buffer things, and it's going to not allow you to screw with your pH, because if your pH goes from between 7.35 and 7.45, you're in trouble. And so your body keeps that very tightly regulated, even if you do eat a lot of stupid things and do a lot of, you know, weird things to your body to mess with that, you know, because you think you're doing the right thing. Your body will keep control of that. If you are able to have an abundance of these materials that will influence that, you are in big trouble. So hopefully you're not able to influence this. So basically, just eat what you're supposed to eat what we're biologically adapted to eat. And, you know, you can argue, I argue that that's a meat diet. I argue that we're carnivores, and we have been carnivores for over 2 million years. That is what all the, you know, paleoanthropologists say. That is what has been argued forever. For some reason, people are now arguing that, no, we've been vegans the whole time and that we're herbivores. That is not anything any paleoanthropologist has ever said. That I know of anyway. And but it is something, right? And even if we are supposed to eat certain plants, and, you know, animals in the wild that eat plants, they eat very specific plants because there are defense chemicals in plants, and you have to be adapted to those defense chemicals to be able to detoxify them safely, or they will cause serious harm or even kill you. And so even koalas that just eat eucalyptus, they don't eat anything else, right? Because those other things will hurt them. Whereas we eat eucalyptus, we could die from that. You know, they eat spinach, they could die from that. So you have to have these adaptations. You have to have some of these defenses and detoxification ability. And we have some, but we're not great at it. And so, but either way, let's say that over the last 2 million years, we've been eating a ton of plants. Which plants? Because again, animals in the wild that eat plants eat very specific and select limited number of plants, varieties of plants. All the plants that we're eating now, that's a massive variety of plants. No animal on earth eats such a variety of plants. And so that doesn't make sense. Also, how many of these plants even existed 1,000 years ago? They're all hybridized and bioengineered, and even genetically modified and engineered recently. All the fruit is completely different than fruit even a few hundred years ago, certainly 20,000 years ago. So none of these plants that we're eating now even existed when we were evolving.
Try to find a lettuce in the forest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, yeah. Spot the vegetables the next time you go hiking, you know, they don't exist. These aren't plants that exist in the wild, you know? And so whatever plants, maybe if we were even supposed to eat plants, even if we did forage and things like that, they weren't these plants that we're eating now. Those plants did not exist. And meat did exist. And during the ice ages, how many, fresh garden salads were available? How many, fruit trees and honey, beehives and things like that were on the land bridge crossing, Europe to North America when people walked across, what's now the Bering Strait. There was no plants available. They ate meat. That is what our ancestors ate. That's what the Mongolians ate. That's what the Maasai eat now. That's what the Nanette eat now. That's what the Inuit traditionally eat. The Native Americans traditionally eat. So, this is what we are supposed to eat. So whatever you eat, all animals have a specific diet that they're biologically designed to eat. And we are no different. We are animals. Just because we live in houses and we talk over computers does not mean that we are not animals. We did not come here from space. We were not like, flashed out of nowhere. We are animals, and we are subject to the same rules that apply to all animals. And one of those rules is that animals eat a specific biologically designed, appropriate diet to their biological design. And if they eat outside of that, they get sick. And we are getting sick. And we need to understand and recognize that sickness is not disease. It is toxicities and malnutrition. We are not eating what we're supposed to eat. This is why there are signs at parks that say, do not feed the animals. That's not what they eat. They will get sick. And at the zoo, the same thing. Because if you feed an animal something that doesn't eat in the wild, something that didn't evolve on, it gets very sick. What does it get sick with? So obesity, heart disease, liver disease, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune issues, arthritis, right? Dogs and cats get the same things. They're known carnivores, and yet we're giving them grain and plant-based kibble. Vets are now saying, oh, you need to give them vegetables. You need to give them why? Why would you give a carnivore vegetables? That's insane. And, they're getting the same diseases that we are. Absolutely. Diseases. They're not catching it from us.
I made a lot of research the past few years on dogs and their natural diet. And I have a dog, so I'm concerned. And my dog, since his birth, since after the mother's milk, he's been on a raw meat, raw organs, and raw bone diet, nothing else. And some people, including vets, are telling me, "Oh, you're crazy. Give him a little bit of rice, a little bit of veggies." And say, "Why? He's a carnivore, and this dog is never sick. He never causes me any problem. He never ever destroyed anything in the house, not once." Now, and he never sees the vet. So, why change?
Yeah. Well, that's why the vet's telling you to feed him some rice. It's just like, no, I need to pay for my boat. Let's go. Get him sick. Yeah.
Well, the second part of my last question is going to be something very controversial. It's going to be, okay, Dr. Chaffee, what about cheat days? And let me explain before you cut my throat.
Yeah.
Number one, I'm French, raw milk, cheese. What are your thoughts on this? And number two, once a week, I have dessert. But dessert, let me explain. I have a bowl of raw milk, organic, grass-fed kefir with a handful of blueberries and an egg yolk. And I eat that once a week. What are your thoughts on this? Am I feeding my sugar addiction, or is it gonna kill me, or can I keep going, or is it not the best, but it's okay? What do you think?
I think it's not the best, but if you're able to do that and not fall off the wagon and fall off the rails, and it's working for you and you feel good in your health and you're meeting your health expectations, then that's a personal choice. People get concerned when they sort of have a day where they fall off, like, their family comes in and they have all these wonderful, amazing French pastries, and they just go, oh, well, that's it. I can't do this. And then they just go back to eating the way they normally do. Well, you don't have to do that. You can get back on, like you say, you're going straight back to carnivore tomorrow, which is exactly what is you should do. You fall off, you do some of these things. Okay, fine. But it's like, it's like if you, you're on the wagon for, drinking alcohol or something like that, and you go out once and you have a couple of drinks and you go on a bender. I mean, you decide like, okay, that was a mistake. I had fun, but that's it. I'm really worried about my health, and I want to make sure that I'm not doing this anymore. Going back and going back to abstaining from alcohol, or you just go, well, I guess that's it. I drank once, and so I'll just keep drinking for the rest of my life. Again, obviously it's better if you sort of abstain, having a drink every now and then, that's better than drinking every day. So it's better, but I think it would be best for your health. I guess, that's the thing too. If you want that bit of enjoyment, and that's providing something beneficial to your life, then that's great. And if you feel that outweighs, maybe some of the bit not feeling optimal all the time, that's completely your choice. For me, I just like feeling optimal all the time, so I sort of avoid that. And then you have to sort of think about cheat days as well as, in context of something else. Like, would you have a cheat day for cigarettes? There's just like on Sunday, you can just smoke as many cigarettes as you want. And, after that, you're not going to smoke. Or, what you tend to do is people tend to binge on those days, and they tend to smoke a lot more or drink a lot more because this is my day. I can do it. The cage is open. I can just go to town. And then what does that do? You end up feeling awful. And then for the rest of the week, you're now addicted to this stuff again. And you're now feeling pretty wretched. And you're dealing with these withdrawals, and you're thinking about it, and you're craving it, and you're just sort of working against yourself. And then by the end of the week, when you're almost over the cravings and done with it, that's your day again, and you reload and you get yourself addicted again. Would you have a cheat day for smoking? Would you have a cheat day for drinking? Would you have a cheat day for cocaine or heroin? Probably not. Not unless you were okay with the fact that you could fall off pretty quickly and maintain an addiction and just constantly be in a state of withdrawal. Those are my sort of thoughts on cheat days. But raw milk and dairy.
I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that. Jesus.
Yeah. So raw milk and dairy, and again, coming from France, I've never had better cheese than when I was in France. And like, people don't even understand that you have to even have these things be ripe. They get like a wheel of like Camembert or Brie, and it's rock hard. It's like, well, that's not going to work. That's disgusting. Like, no. And so I understand like the feeling that you want to keep up with the cheese, raw cheese, raw dairy.
Looking for, it's the love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it is great. It's fantastic. And on French bread as well, it's even better.
I can do without now. It's been hard, but I can do without. I can just have cheese and butter.
That's good. Yeah, it's I think that dairy for some people is a problem because it can increase inflammation a bit, and so especially people with autoimmune issues, they really do have to avoid this stuff. And again, raw dairy is very different from pasteurized, homogenized dairy. It's very different. And
just to agree with you for a second, if I had pasteurized cheese, I feel the pain, I feel the inflammation immediately, like 10 minutes after I have it. Raw milk cheese doesn't do that to me. Yeah, I feel the difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so that's the thing is it is very different, and it can increase inflammation, especially people that are sensitive to these things. Like, you've noticed some sensitivities, and people with autoimmune issues, they're quite sensitive to dairy generally. And so it's best for people in that situation to try to avoid it. I tend to think of dairy as it's good. It has good things in it, but it doesn't have everything. It's not complete nutrition like meat is. And so if you're looking at this, that, meat is up here, and, or like red meat's really up here. I mean, like lean chicken breast would be down here, right? It's not having the fat, doesn't have all the nutrients that like, steak or ribeye would, right? But, dairy is sort of on that scale too. So it has a lot of good nutrients, has a lot of good fat, but it doesn't have everything that like a ribeye would have. So even then there is this disparity of a benefit, right? So if you're looking for optimizing your health, then dairy, you can understand, even though it is a net positive in most people, that it can still be, there can still be that difference and have you not feel as optimal. Raw milk is amazing. It feels like you're just drinking pure life force. And that for me is very like addictive. Like I get a gallon of raw cow milk when I can rarely find it. I will not stop drinking that thing. Like it will never make it to the refrigerator. Like I'll just pour a big glass and be like, that was amazing. I'll just be thinking about it the whole time. Like, well, maybe just one more glass. Well, I'm just maybe half a glass. I'm like, you know what? I'm halfway through it. I might as well just finish it, and just keep going. I like, that's what I do every single time. And so for me, it's just, that's not what I want. Those carbohydrates, there are enough lactose in it that can trigger that, I need to eat sort of addictive sort of eating. And I don't like that. I don't like having that feeling. And also, you can derail your metabolic system, and then you're out of ketosis for 24 hours or so, and you're not feeling your best. You're not working your best, and you're storing fat instead of burning fat, and all the rest. And so I avoid milk for that reason. Even though I do really like milk, I really enjoy milk, but I don't drink it for that reason. And if I were to use cheese, I don't just eat cheese on its own. I would melt cheese on meat. So I use cheese as a condiment, as opposed to, a part of the meal itself. It's just like, I melt cheese, I put cheese onto meat and I eat the meat. The meat is still the meal for me.
I agree. That's what I do. All right. Well, it's been interesting, and thank you so much for all the knowledge and the clarification and everything.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. A lot of fun.
All right. So, well, if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them under this video, and I'll do my best. I always try to answer everybody, even if it's sometime a little time consuming. Thank you so much, Anthony, for being with us. I really appreciate it. And I hope we'll talk again soon, probably on your channel.
Absolutely. Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.